The Trade is brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.
Hello and welcome to The Trade. Well, before we get into the charts, let's take a look at what traders are watching out there. China's Xi Jinping has rolled out the carpet for Ukraine's war aggressors in a show of solidarity. He has convened a meeting with Russia and North Korean counterparts for the first time. Afghanistan has experienced an earthquake, with the latest numbers indicating at least 800 people have been killed, and the Taliban has asked the world for help. And Belgium is set to recognise the Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly. That's as the Foreign Minister said on Tuesday, adding to international pressure on Israel after similar moves by Australia, Britain, Canada and France. Let's now turn to what traders and how they can resist temptation when investing and manage dopamine when trading. Well, Mandi Rafsanjani is joining us from Trading Psychology. Mandi, welcome back. Good to catch up with you again. So,
hi, Andrew.
Interesting that you make this comparison between the attraction of ice cream and trading.
Yes, I mean, have you ever experienced walking down the street and then you walk past an ice cream shop, and before you didn't have any cravings for ice cream, but you see the ice cream and suddenly it's like, whoa, I want an ice cream. And, you know, the anticipation of how yummy the ice cream is going to taste, and, you know, you have all the imagination in your brain, the brain cinema, as you call it here in Germany, is kicking in. And then before you know it, you have an ice cream in your hand and you walk out of the ice cream shop with an ice cream. And exactly the same is happening in trading. And there's 3 ways dopamine is involved in trading, like with ice cream. So when we look at the ice cream example, just to make it more tangible, the moment you eat the ice cream, then you have a reward dopamine. So the reward centers in the brain are being stimulated, and it's like, ice cream. Then the moment when you saw the ice cream shop, that was anticipatory dopamine. So you were anticipating, expecting how yummy the ice cream is going to taste, and you were looking forward to it. And it's exactly the same when we look at trading, when we look forward to making a profit in the markets. And then there is the dopamine crash. Let's say you have the ice cream and it doesn't taste nice at all, and you're so disappointed. Then we get a dopamine crash, and the dopamine levels are going to crash.
Well, just tell us then how dopamine works, be it craving an ice cream or craving those profits.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the 2 biggest challenges for traders, I find, I mean, I've been working with traders for like 20 years now, and the topics are always the same. It's overtrading and oversizing. And this is not about the markets. It's pretty much about brain chemistry, much like ice cream. And an impulse, for example, to jump into a trade is just a dopamine kick in disguise, nothing else. So when we understand that, it's really helpful, because then again, our behaviors become more tangible and we can do more about managing ourselves. So when we look at a stimulus appears in the markets, let's say a big candle, something is moving, and then the trader anticipates making a big profit. So then we have a dopamine surge. If the trade then ends up and you take a profit, then you have the reward dopamine. So in that moment, you feel so good about the trade and about yourself that you want more and more and more. And I see that a lot, again, with my traders who are struggling. They make a good profit and then they give it all back because the dopamine wants more and more. Of course, it's not only just the dopamine, Andrew. It's like many influencing factors that impact these behaviors, but dopamine is a really big one. Now let's look at the flip side. If the trade loses, the dopamine crashes, and then we have a dopamine deficit. And what the brain does, it wants to replenish the dopamine levels, and that's when traders go into tilt. So It's really interesting. There's so much research now being in how we can use dopamine to manage ourselves. So, for example, they had an experiment where they gave students who are perfectly healthy, they gave them ADHD treatment medication, because ADHD, what is that? They can't focus, or many are not motivated, and that's amongst other things, a low level of dopamine. And then they gave them ADHD medication, and the healthy people then had too much dopamine, and they would make really hasty, rash decisions. So we could see, or they found out how important dopamine really is. And that's why it's really important that before we trade, we have rituals to replenish dopamine, for example, so we don't need to seek dopamine in the markets. Very unhealthy ways to replenish dopamine is, of course, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? We know that. Even though it must have been a great era, it was just before mine. But a healthy way to replenish dopamine is, well, I love ice baths, but it doesn't have to be ice baths. It can be meditation. It can be hanging out with friends. So there's many healthy ways to replenish our dopamine, so we don't need to do that in the markets and go on tilt. Another way is to be proactive, to really know, okay, so I now had a loss. I know my dopamine levels are low. I now take a step back to replenish my dopamine levels first. And also to understand, for example, I had a trader I worked with yesterday, and he was in a trade that went up, and then it did a retracement. And he said, in that moment, I jumped out of the trade. I was like, I'm going to take my profits. And then he regretted it because the trade went to his profits. So what happened here was that he had to deal with the regret of missing out on the profit, or the regret of the trade turning into a loss. And so that is, again, dopamine in action, and saying, if the trade goes into a loss, that's just my dopamine levels going low. I can deal with that, for example.
All right. Well, beware that ice cream. Mandi, thanks so much for joining us in Trading Psychology.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, after the break, we're going to take a look at some sectors perhaps you should consider, certainly post-reporting season. Stay with us.
The Trade was brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.